Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Ball, my co-host Justin Baker. Joining me as always, Justin. What's up? How's life?
It's been so long since we've talked.
We
Yeah,
look both
great
very
days.
plaid.
Oh yeah, I didn't
No,
even
we're
notice
rocking
that.
plaid, the flannelly plaid vibe.
We should match more often.
We really should.
Yeah,
I have more. I have a
I
lot of
had
I
more.
have a lot of flannel.
This is my only flannel.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I need
Well,
more.
I'm yeah. I've got the lumberjack thing going on, so it makes sense. Yeah, we're so like you said, we did just hang out a couple days ago. We did an episode, top 25 players of the last 25 years. If you have not checked that out, go and listen to that now. Subscribe to the show. On today's show, though, we are going to get into some current topics that are going on. We just figured we'd toss some questions back and forth to each other. So we're going our 10 burning questions. I've got 5 for Justin. He's got 5 for me. I don't think this was a said rule, but I assume like I need to ask you at least one question about the Red Wings, and you did the same, asking me about the Leafs. So we've got lots of good questions, good conversation. So that we're believe it or not, we're like 6 weeks away from the trade deadline, something like that.
It's creeping up, man.
So, and first we're gonna get the Four Nations, of course, which is coming in about a month, and then from there, let's see, 51 days to the trade deadline. So by the time you're watching this, less than 50 days, probably around 50 days left. So really not much time at all. And yeah, the rumors have been going. I feel like nothing has really happened all season long, though.
I'm waiting because there's usually always there's one team
Yep.
that January, close to February, they make a huge splash, right? And then of course that just kind of trickled down a little bit, little moves here and there, but really we haven't had that big move yet. So I'm
Yeah.
fingers
I,
crossed.
I would say, as far as like rumors go, this has been a down year. For some burn it, like, oh man, these trades are out there. Like, yes, there's been the Rangers and the Canucks and a little bit of this like Sabres Cousins stuff, but nothing that's just going crazy right now. And maybe
No.
if you're a New York Rangers fan, you're going, well, all we've been hearing is trade rumors. um, but yes, it just feels a little more quiet than usual.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of that has to do with the competitive balance we've seen, right? I mean, what was it a week ago in the Eastern Conference? All 16 teams essentially were, maybe 10, 8 points out of a playoff spot, at the worst. So really, when you're only 4 or 5 wins away from potentially hitting a wild card spot, right? You're not really thinking about giving up on the season yet, especially like if you're Buffalo, for example, right? You're not looking at trading guys, making a big move yet, just because, again, you're still kind of in it. But
Yeah,
really, are
ish.
you in it though? But
Although, hey, in the Atlantic Division, you've got 7 of the 8 teams above 500. That's pretty unusual, I would say. I mean, you've got in the Metropolitan Division, there are only 4 teams above 500. So that's and
crazy.
I think the next close and yeah, 5 in the Pacific and 5 in the Central. So by far the most competitive division, top to bottom. Not necessarily, you know, I I'm not putting I'm not trying to put Detroit. I'm very much on the fence. We'll get to Detroit. We'll get to Detroit. We've got some questions about that. Why don't we just jump right in? Because we could dance around asking these questions all for the next 45 minutes, but instead let's just start asking the questions. Why don't I go first? Because we're talking about the New York Rangers and the Vancouver Canucks, this one seems to fit. Who gets traded first? Is it Pedersen, JT Miller, one of the two, both of them? I doubt both of them, but one of the two. Or is it Kreider slash Zibanejad, depending on who you talk to? Which group makes that move first?
Ooh. Yeah, I love this question. And like you said, it's pretty much been the only big rumor going around as of lately.
And it could be for each other, so it could
Right.
happen at the same time. But from what I understand, that has been proposed, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I really think it's probably going to be Elias Pettersson or JT Miller. And I mean, to be quite honest, it could be one of those two guys for another one of our other two guys that you talked about, right? Zibanejad and Kreider. And for me, really, it comes down to, you look at Elias Pettersson, right? We know he's done, that 100-point season. He's got that massive contract. But the difference between him and these other three people we're talking about here is he's under 30 years old, right? So with that age gap, right, obviously teams are much more willing to take a chance on a guy who's already proven he can put up 100 points, but yet he's still young enough to really kind of rebound if he is struggling a little bit. And, when you're in your 30s and you're kind of struggling a little bit, a lot of times it's easier to just say, you know what, this is probably it, right? The career is going to start dipping now. This is, the end. And it becomes harder for teams, other teams too, to be willing to take on a contract, right? For a guy like JT Miller, right? Unless there's kind of guarantees or sometimes even money going back the other way. A lot of times teams are a little bit more scared to take a guy in his 30 with a lot of term left, right?
Well, and when you're talking about a lot of term, but also, there was some, when he was out for a while, and like there was that portion of it too.
Mm.
Like, how committed is JT Miller here? I would imagine that that's being tossed around as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention that, but when you talk about the contracts, JT Miller, Zibanejad, these guys all have no trade clauses on their contract. So they control really where they're going. Where Elias Pettersson, his doesn't kick until next year. So if there's a time to move him, if you're trying to shake it up, it's this year or maybe even this offseason. I'm not sure exactly what time of the year his no trade kicks in for next season. But again, it's the time to move him. And, of course, you're not going to get an Elias Pettersson back in return, right? But
Oh,
maybe you get a star defenseman, which is what I think Vancouver really wants. They need another top four defenseman and another guy who can play center. So, for example, right, we take a team like Detroit, for example, who I know has been kind of kicking the tires on a guy like Dylan Cousins, for example. But if maybe they're looking at a guy like Elias Pettersson, right? Obviously, maybe you're sending back a guy like JT Compher, who again would be a serviceable, middle six, I think, centerman for Vancouver. And if at the very least, right, then they can go pluck, one of Detroit's, defensive prospects because they got a lot of them. But I don't think, obviously Detroit's going to be a viable trade partner. But again, that's just an example that comes to mind.
I just don't. I don't see how you could give up on Pedersen at this. Like, I mean, he's still a great player. I think, to me, you're looking at JT Miller. You make this move with the Rangers because
Mm,
he wants to go there. He will go there. He will waive his no trade clause to go to the Rangers, and you
yeah.
figure out how to make that happen.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's the trade to me that makes the most sense that I think would benefit both teams, whether or not you're sending Zibanejad back the other way, which we've heard rumored about. But
But
does
if I'm the
Zibanejad
Rangers, I don't think I want to trade Zibanejad for JT Miller because JT Miller cannot play defense. He does not play
Well,
defense.
there have been that has been a knock on his game, but the question remains who's going back the other way, right? And of course, right now the Rangers do have cap space to make this move, right? They've got, oh gosh, I think it's 21, 23 million bucks in deadline cap space and 10 plus $1 million right now in just current cap space. But who's going back the other way, right? I think maybe you look at a guy like Philip Hedl, but
Trocheck?
yeah, Trocheck maybe, but I think honestly, to me, Trocheck's the guy that I've been hearing lately that if they're going to make somebody else captain this year, he's the guy, right? I think he's been the voice in the locker room. I think that most guys respect. So I don't see him getting moved either.
Yeah. And see, to me, Vancouver, I mean, they're still very much in the playoff hunt. Like, they're 1 point out of the playoffs. They're still there. They still have a shot. The Rangers, on the other hand, I mean, we're talking 5 points out of the playoffs, and things like, it doesn't look like they're ready to turn things around by any means. Like, they've been bad on the road, they've been bad at home. At least Vancouver has been really good on the road. They have been bad at home, but they've lost 10 games in overtime. That's almost like, or a shootout. That's almost incredibly unlucky. Like, that's so many games to lose in overtime that you almost look at that and you go, all right, the Rangers, they've only lost three games. I'm trying to get 3 games in overtime. Whereas, so then you go, well, they're losing a lot of games in regulation. That's a bad look. But when you lose a ton in overtime, hey, yes, your points look a little inflated, but also we all know like 3-on-3 is a relative toss up. Like, yeah, there's some teams that have a little bit better record, and then there's other teams that have a little worse. But usually, it's a relative toss up, especially when you get to the shootout later on. So I look at that and I go, I mean, Vancouver's very much in this. I mean, you look at they go if they were to win 3 of those other games, they're securely in a playoff spot right now and fighting with the LA Kings for the 3rd spot in the Pacific. So I think losing either one of those players, unless you get someone back who has an immediate impact, I think it's a mistake.
Mm.
Even if they don't want to be there right now, I think you go, this season is still viable. Let's figure this out. Get Rick Tocchet on board. Make this happen. I think that it would be a mistake to give up on the year, based on like what they've been able to do thus far, and almost like a little bit unlucky. So we'll see what they do, but I think it's a mistake to give up on what they have.
Fair.
At least for this year. Much easier to move, and I know a no move kicks in, but much easier you could probably convince him to move, Pettersson to move, if you really felt like you needed to deal him. He only has 2 years left on his deal after that, so I think you could convince him to move if it was to somebody that he wanted to play for.
Okay.
All right. Oh, it's your question.
Yeah, let's go. So look, speaking of Vancouver, right? They've been doing this all with a relatively unknown goaltender in Kevin Lakin, and right now he's playing phenomenal. Which is a segue to my first question to you, because I look at Toronto, right? Your team. We've talked about this many times, but when I look at the goaltending there, right? We've got Stolarz and we've got Wall there. How confident are you with these two goaltenders going into maybe the final stretch of the season, the second half, and potentially the playoff with both of these guys? And do you think maybe Toronto makes a move to bring in another goaltender?
No, I don't think they do. I think they're pretty confident in what they have in Stolarz and Wool, and I as far as a backup goes, like between Murray, Hildeby, come playoff time, you're probably not using that third guy anyways. I know it happens, but as far as third string goalies go, I think that they're pretty covered. And unless just someone falls on their lap, it's not like you're going. I know, like Tristan Jarry went on waivers today,
Yeah.
and I thought, ooh, what would that look like? I don't think anybody's going to touch him. Obviously, he has way too big of a cap hit and has proven that he just can't play anymore, which is unfortunate. My assumption is he goes on waivers. He goes down to the minors. At some point, they'll bring him back up, but he will probably be bought out because he's got 1 year left.
2 years left. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, either you're buying him out, like to buy, either you buy him out or you trade him and hold on to some of that cap space. But it's going to be tricky. You're probably going to be trading a pick with him
Oh,
just to make that happen.
3 years after the season left.
Oh, 3 years left. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of rope left there. Good signing there by Dubas. Dubas is just, man. Yeah, I think the way Stolarz played before he got hurt, I think you're more than confident with him being your number one guy.
Yeah.
And if he is hurt, Wall, I think is good enough. Do I wish they had a superstar goalie? Sure, but I think that Stolarz could get it done. I don't think they need they've kind of proven this year they don't need a top flight goalie. They're still first place in the division. They've had seemingly like everybody hurt at different points. Austin Matthews is still hurt, and I would guess that they're looking at it like, I mean, why are we going to go spend assets on a goalie when we have good goaltending? I would say they have good goaltending. It's been fine. It has not been the reason that they've lost many games this year.
That's fair.
The reason they're losing is because they lack depth scoring. This is like always most of the really good teams in the league. What do they lack? You go, well, they lack depth scoring and maybe some like a top 4 defenseman. How many teams in the league do you look at depth scoring, top 4 defenseman? Like
everybody.
Pretty much everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, a combined 8 games of playoff experience between the two of them. So
yeah,
good luck.
That's true. Mm-hmm. But you look at like Antti Niemi. How much experience did he have going into the playoffs?
Yeah.
Corey
Well,
Crawford, how much experience did he have before he was going and winning Stanley Cups? So, not a lot.
well, let me ask you. I mean, if you can get a guy like Alex Lyon, for example, right, it cost you a fourth or third round pick. Would you want to bring in a guy like that towards the end of the year?
I I suppose if you felt like you if Stolars isn't healthy,
Hmm.
if it maybe takes him a little bit longer to get back, my guess, I think it just came out yesterday that he was a few weeks away.
Mm.
So a few weeks. My guess is I look at that and I would go, well, that means he's back before the Four Nations. And if there's any question mark about whether he's 100%, they'll probably just go, just like, we'll go into the Four Nations, like take that time off, come back fresh at the end of it. Or they throw him in for a game or two and then give him that extra rest to kind of see how he responds to playing again. But yeah, I think the Leafs, for the most part, stand pat in the goaltending. They've got too many other things they need.
Yeah, well, won't disagree with you there. And John Tavares, I don't know if you saw, went down during practice. I think today
I didn't see that.
looked a little banged up. Haven't heard anything about it, but yeah, they were doing like some little mini skate, mini drills, and
Perfect.
saw him go down in the corner.
Perfect.
So
That seems to be the year they're having. Just like
yeah,
stupid little injuries that nag.
mm-hmm.
But that's what happens when you play hockey all the time. It's gonna have stupid injuries that nag. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's jump. We'll stay in the Eastern Conference. Looking at the Washington Capitals, they are now just blowing everyone away. 63 points. They are one win away from 30, which no one else in the NHL has yet. The Vegas Gold. Oh, no, sorry. The Winnipeg Jets have 30.
Mm.
But in 45 games. They played one more game, so they could match them, and they have more points. So tied for first place in the league in points. Again, we've kind of talked about this earlier at different points in the season, but now, like we've talked, oh, are they for real? Like, is this team a legitimate playoff team? Well, now, I mean, there's no question. They're a playoff team. They're going to make the playoffs. Barring an absolute collapse, they're going to make the playoffs. And it's likely that they're one of the top teams in the Metropolitan Division, which we had them outside the playoffs. I believe both of us had them outside the playoffs
Yes.
for this year. So we essentially saw it as like, this is a rebuild year for the Capitals. However, now my tune has changed, and I ask you, are they Stanley Cup contenders?
No, I'm going to say no. And obviously you're going to ask why, and so let me get into that. So
No, let's move
obviously,
on to the next question.
okay, let's move. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, right, we look at the stats, right, with this team, right? They're second in goals for, fourth in goals against in the league, which are phenomenal numbers. And, you got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff there. They're doing a great job. They have a great system. But when I look at, right, when I look how they played last year, right? And so sometimes you have to look at this season and you think, okay, are a lot of guys playing above, where maybe their potential is, or maybe where they should be playing, i.e. guys like Tom Wilson, or even, I mean, no offense, but Alexander Ovechkin, right? He's, does chasing the record have a lot to do with this? So once you get into the playoffs, when the record really doesn't matter anymore, am I questioning his drive? No, but, could he, that goals per game average kind of dip off a little bit, perhaps, right? Goals get a little tougher in the playoffs. He's not as fleet as foot anymore. So, I went back and I started, looking at all the previous Stanley Cup contenders, or not previous Stanley Cup contenders, but champions. And you look at all these teams, and there was no doubt going into each one of those seasons, many years leading up to it, that they were Stanley Cup contenders and they were legit teams. All of these teams, leading back, pretty much, with the exception of maybe St. Louis in there, all of them had a star forward player. As far as, no offense to Alex Ovechkin, but he's not the superstar he was, right? I mean, he's a second line guy at best, and you can't really rely too much defensively, with his game. But outside of that, they had a star, most of these teams had star forwards. They had a, top, 1-2 defender that you could absolutely rely on for 28 minutes a night, which I do think the Capitals have. And they all had, a legit goaltender, which, there were no questions about, right? So, Vasi, Borowski, right? The year they lost the cup, right? He just kind of stepped up and then proved again, hey, I am this Vezina winning goaltender. So again, no question marks about what's in net. For me, Logan Thompson is my guy, and I think it's still a sham that he's not on the Four Nations over Sam Montembeau, but that's a whole nother discussion. But again, the
19
question,
and 2,
dude, insane numbers. But I mean,
92 and 3.
right. But, at some point, right, like I said, he's going to take over as the number one. But the difference is I haven't seen consistency out of this team as far as, multiple years leading up to this, right? So they're still kind of fresh as far as, being on the scene and this dangerous threat of a team to the Stanley Cup, playoffs. So if they go in there this year, they win a couple rounds, they maybe get to the Eastern Conference Finals, they look good, coming in next year, of course, I'm going to say they're a Stanley Cup contender. But having the season they did last year where they barely squeaked in thanks to the Wings, losing a couple in overtime, and again, with that lack of superstar power up front on the forward group where again, no offense to Alexander Ovechkin, but you look at the rest of this team, Protas, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Tom Wilson, are these guys that I think that can drive play and really steal a game if they need to? Probably not. So,
But those, I mean, you look at where's the difference between last year? Well, we definitely didn't have a Dylan Strome with a point per game.
sure.
We definitely didn't have like Protas. He wasn't doing what he's doing.
Mm,
Pierre-Luc Dubois, there's the addition that has seemingly changed everything for this team.
right. And maybe that's the difference maker.
If we're looking at something that has made a huge difference, it's in goal, and it's Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's found a home, and he's kind of like, dare I say, they have found a replacement for Nicholas Backstrom in Pierre-Luc Dubois, because I think they found somebody who doesn't want the puck. He doesn't like having the puck. He likes to dish it. That's what I mean. He likes to dish it. He's not a goal
Sure.
scorer. So I think you found your guy, and he seems to fit alongside Alex Ovechkin. And Alex Ovechkin is such a huge personality. There's no room for Pierre-Luc Dubois to be Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it's perfect for Pierre-Luc Dubois because he needs to not have the spotlight, and somebody else needs to have that. So
Yeah.
I think that it's going really well, and like, hey, he's what, 27?
Yeah, he's still young, and
Nate?
again,
I was
the
an idiot when
inconsistent
I was
play
that
and
age, so.
yeah, well, just his inconsistent play in the past, right? And again, I need to see it to believe it with this team before I'm going to dub them a Stanley Cup contender.
Okay, fair enough. All right, your question.
Yeah. All right. So just with the NHL, right? We obviously we're talking, these superstar players, right? But what I want to know, speaking of superstars, who is your Hart Trophy favorite and potentially maybe the next big superstar in the NHL?
My Hart Trophy favorite. Well, I gotta say, I'm really between Kirill Kaprizov was
Mm,
the first name that came to mind. There's like, what team has one guy, and he's only played in 34 games. The guy has 20 even strength goals. That's just ridiculous. And I look at what he's done for that franchise, a franchise that's not supposed to be competitive right now, and they are, and it's a bulk of that comes because of him. So I look to Kaprizov, and then I think I gotta look to Kucherov. Kucherov
okay.
would be my other guy because, man, he is the Tampa Bay Lightning they're just scoring goals.
They look
I mean,
good.
153 goals. It's crazy that they seem to be losing a lot of like one goal games, and then they blow some teams out. But for what this team lost, to still be chugging along, I mean, Kucherov's got 63 points in 40 games. I mean, he's just spectacular. He probably is going to end up with close to 100 assists again. Maybe not 100. I think he definitely is. He's missing Stamkos for the apples, but he's just making it up by scoring a bunch of goals instead, scoring goals himself. He, right now would be on pace for almost the same production as he had last year, which is unreal. And last year he won the Art Ross and was second in Hart Trophy voting to Nathan MacKinnon. So I mean, and McKinnon even, there's so many good choices for this award, but I'm going with those two are my choices right now. Those guys.
Okay. I don't hate it. Don't hate it at all. And wasn't Kucherov your choice last year when we were doing the end of season, picks there?
Yes, I believe he was.
I feel like he was. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was. I like, man. I mean, he's just, there's something about him.
He's
Like,
a special talent.
some guys you just look at and you're like, some players you feel like you know them. Like you're like, I know your tendencies. I know how, like, why what you do works. And him, you're like, I don't know anything about you, or like why what you do works. Like he just he just has his space. He can create space, he can find space, and that is a unique. Usually, it's one or the other, and he can do both.
Yeah.
Uh, so, anyways, him or Kirill Kaprizov. If the Wild finish where they finish and he continues to dominate, I mean, I'm pointing at Kirill Kaprizov. He's probably my top guy right now.
That's a good pick. I could put him in my top three for sure. And again, when you look at what this award really means, and it's maybe gotten away from that over the last decade, right? The most valuable player to your team. To me, Kirill Kaprizov might be the definition of that this season.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of where I was coming from. Is that,
Sure.
I mean, if any of these teams lost the play, like certain players, they would be completely lost. I think he's the number one guy. Like,
Mm, yep.
all right. And Nathan McKinnon, I mean, certainly, he's got 70 points. Guy's got 55 assists right now. He's going to get 100 assists, which is crazy too. Okay, I wanted to ask you right now, Connor McDavid. He was actually in 10th, and he picked up a few more points since I wrote those questions to you a couple days ago. He's
Mm,
now in 7th. He's 11 points back of Nathan McKinnon, and he's played 5 fewer games. Knowing that, and Ovechkin needs what is it? 24 more goals
he
to hit
needs
Gretzky's record.
21
21. Okay,
to
21.
tie.
So he needs 21 goals in the last, we'll say, about 40 games of the season. And Connor McDavid, 11 points back of McKinnon for the Art Ross. Which one is more likely? McDavid wins the Art Ross, or Ovechkin beats Gretzky's record this season?
Man, this was a tough
He's
question.
got 38 games left to
Yeah,
score 21 goals.
a tough question. I mean, uh, literally, I could see both of these things happening this season, which would be phenomenal for the league. But if I'm going to pick anyone, because I do think, Ovi's going to have the benefit. I think as we near closer and closer to this record, you're going to see him playing on a lot of those 6-on-5 situations where maybe he's just sitting up at the point, just waiting for somebody to clear the puck out of the zone, and he can just go get an empty netter. To me, I'm going to pick Ovi only because I think the talent in front of McDavid. Yeah, again, McDavid is a phenomenal player and a guy who can easily put up 3, 4 points every night if he wants to. But when you look at guys in front of him, Nathan McKinnon, the seasons they're having, Kucherov, it's going to be a lot to chase down, right? And of
Yep.
course, making up 11 points in 40 games is you got to get, I mean, essentially an extra point almost, every night, I feel like. But for me, which again, more than possible. But when you look at the pace Ovi's on right now, right, he's scoring at a pace of a little over 0.7 goals per game right now. And if you take that and you spread it out over the remaining 38 games,
We'll do it.
he's on pace for a little over 27 goals this season. So again, that 21 goal pace that 21 goals he needs to catch Gretzky and hit 22. I think again, if he stays on this pace, that's absolutely more than possible. And I think the league would love to have that.
No.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
It to me, it would be much better if it was like he's chasing it at the end of the season and then he gets it, as opposed to like, all right, he's 2 off Gretzky's record for next season.
right.
Like that just is. I mean, it's like, well, okay, it's gonna happen. Neat, and it happens
Mhm.
early on when no one is really watching. Like
Right.
in the grand
We're in the
scheme of
thick
things,
of
people are watching the baseball playoffs. They're watching football
exactly.
start. They're watching college football, and like hockey kind of takes a back seat to those things until football's over.
Hmm.
And I just think it would be epic if he can get it this year. And I did say at the beginning of the year that I thought he'd get it.
You
So I
did.
got
I did
I gotta,
not.
come on, baby.
Yeah.
I wish I
Yep.
put money on it. Actually, I don't, because then I'd be really stressed out. All right. Your question.
Yes. So what I want to ask you next, speaking of Stanley Cup teams, right? We talked about the Washington Capitals a little bit there, but when you look at these playoff teams currently, where the standings are, I mean, and you can even, if you want, you can take a team right outside on the bubble, given point percentage wise, consideration. Which of the playoff teams right now do you think is the biggest pretender?
Biggest pretender. Well, the easy answer is the Boston Bruins because their points percentage is actually lower than two of the teams outside of the playoffs. That's an easy route to go. As far as a team that is, much higher up in the standings that everybody's got as a really great team, I gotta say, I think that the LA Kings are pretenders.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I know that they've got a great defense. I just something about them I just don't love, and
They're
I
not
think
flashy, right? So maybe that's the problem.
come playoff time, they've been fantastic at home. They're 14-2 at home, 10-10 on the road. They've struggled on the road, and I just don't know if the goaltending will be there for the playoffs, and they're gonna have to play the Oilers again. Is the way that it's looking. And I look at that and I go, they are not going to beat the Oilers. It's not going to
No.
happen. Sorry, not going to happen. So if there's a team that's in the playoffs right now that I go, I have no faith in them at all, it's the LA Kings. No faith. I think that's a better way to put it. Like, if they played another team, could they win? Yes. I don't think they're beating the Oilers. I just don't. I don't think it's happening for them.
No,
So,
I don't disagree with you on that one at all. The thing that made me laugh, I haven't looked at the LA Kings, statistics in a while as far as like individual stats. The fourth leading scorer on this team. Can you guess who that is?
oh boy. Well, now I can't look at the stat. I've got the stats
Yeah, no,
almost pulled up. Drew Doughty.
it's Warren Fogle. I mean,
Ah,
that's what makes
former
me laugh about
former
this
Edmonton
team,
Oiler.
dude. Yeah, when Warren Fogle is your fourth highest scorer, I mean, that's when maybe you need to reevaluate things a little bit. Just say, maybe we need another guy up front, right? But you know what? I agree with you. I think LA, their defensive play is great. They're getting good goaltending. This trade seems to have worked out for both Washington and LA as far as the Kemper Pierre-Luc Dubois deal. But yeah, you're right. They're going to end up playing Edmonton at some point, and that is not promising.
Yeah, and I knew that Drew Doughty was not actually playing. Which, by the way, he is going to be taking the ice this week, next
Oh,
week,
really?
next week, to be on the ice with the team next week. So that would be a huge. I mean, there's a big boost for the Kings, really defensively. Although I think he put up 50 points last year. So,
He's still
anyways,
a good defenseman.
still a good defense. I mean, no one's going to complain about adding that guy back onto their team, especially from a competitive standpoint. All
Yeah.
right. Bigger disappointment, the Nashville Predators or the New York Rangers?
All
Both
right.
teams are outside the playoffs. Predators with 35 points and the Rangers with 43.
Yeah. I'm going to make this quick and easy. I'm going to say the New York Rangers, mostly because yes, Nashville added 40 goal scorers this offseason. However, when you look at Nashville, right, they were a year removed just from saying, you know what, we're rebuilding, we're starting fresh, right? And then they add Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist to say, you know what, we're going to bring in these vets just to kind of fill in the pieces and be a band-aid.
Stamkos and they Marchessault and they what defenseman did they add? Now off the top of my head, I can't think. But
Oh, Brady Shea, right?
Brady said, yeah.
Yeah, but again, when you look at this team, right, there's not much behind Brady Shea and Roman Yossi. They don't have much up front outside of Marcia Show and Forsberg. So again, there's a lot of question marks with that team. Whereas the New York Rangers,
Staros hasn't been nearly as good as he was
right,
years past.
exactly. But with the New York Rangers, right, they're the President's Trophy winner. They have the superstar goaltender. They've got an elite defenseman, and they've got a great top six, and even an emerging star, in my opinion, in Alex Lafreniere. So they've got all the right pieces, having come off, a lot of quality seasons leading up to this year. So for them to come in with the same personnel and really just kind of bomb, that to me is a
After
little bit more
sweeping the
disappointing.
Washington Capitals to find
Right.
yourself 20 points behind the Washington Capitals halfway through the season is
Yeah.
mind blowing. You would have no one would have ever taken that bet.
Nope. So for me, the Rangers,
All
because
right.
again, they've been my Stanley Cup pick the last few years, and you got to do me dirty like this. Not
I still
cool.
think they'll make the playoffs and then anything
Ooh.
goes. And whereas the Nashville Predators, there's no shot at the playoffs. There was super high expectations and like they're out of it already. They're completely out of it. The Rangers are absolutely still in it. They go and they win. They've got a couple games in hand. They go and win those games, and they're knocking on the door. I
Sure.
think between the two, the Rangers still have a shot, Predators halfway through the year, they're not even watchable. They're 14 points out of the playoffs.
It's crazy.
All right. Your question.
Yeah. Next question. So, Boston Bruins, right? You said they would have been the easy pick for the playoff team that's been the biggest pretender. But what to you has been, I guess, the biggest issue? And maybe is it time to rebuild?
Don't think it's time to rebuild. I think you got to figure out what's going to happen with Marchand.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Pasta Marchand thing was so overblown, and of course, Marchand comes out and says, the guy who started that rumor that we're mad at each other and we're playing on different lines because we don't like each other is like the furthest thing from the truth. I think he posted a picture of Pasta on his back and they're like flying around. It was just a stupid rumor. And even if there was some frustration, like you can have two guys who are best friends go through conflict. Man, you're not going to be best friends with somebody for years. Play a sport with somebody for years and never yell at them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're two dudes and you probably get drunk every now and then together. So eventually somebody's going to yell at somebody, and it probably happened, and that's how a rumor started. But that's stupid. I think Marchand signs in Boston. I think Boston needs to figure out that that second line center, Elias Lindholm, he's fine. I think he could still be a decent top six forward for them, but it's kind of filling in the rest of it. McAvoy's having a down year. Coyle looks as though he's spent, and they'll need to move on from him. I think there's just a lot of things that have gone wrong. And then Hampus Lindholm, he's only played 17 games this year, and he really is the glue of that defense now, because I mean he's that stay-at-home defenseman who just gets it done. He shuts everything down, and he was hurt. I mean, he hasn't played since November 12th, and I think that has really hurt them. So I think all those things. This is maybe the year where you go, we got to retool. There's no way this team's rebuilding. They'll retool.
Yeah.
You don't rebuild when you have a guy who can score 60 to 70 goals in a year like Pastrnak can. And the goaltending, which hasn't been fantastic. Like Swayman's definitely had a down year. Korpisalo has been a little bit better statistically, but both guys bad. Swayman screwed himself. It's always the guy who holds out for more money.
Yep.
I mean, good on him for getting more money, but like it's like a broken record. If you do that, you will have a bad year. You do you will. It always happens. Somebody can tweet that. Send us. Here's 3 examples of where that didn't happen, but it's almost a given. So I think they're just suffering from a couple things, and they need to kind of find a different mix. But they don't need to go like Pastrnak doesn't need to go. Marchand's probably he will re-sign. They'll work it all out. I mean, good on them for not signing an extension. Also, why not? If you think you're going to miss the playoffs, why not go, hey, just trade me somewhere. Let me go have some fun, and I'll come back. That's what Doug Waite used to do. He used to say, Carolina, you trade me, I'll come back.
Yep.
Just trade me somewhere I can get a couple.
I'll go to Edmonton. And
yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That's what I'd be doing every time. All right, one more question for you. It is about your Red Wings. What are the Wings doing different? I know they lost last night to the San Jose Sharks, which is, we'll just pretend that didn't happen.
Yep.
Before that, 7 wins in a row, 7-2 with a new head coach. And what are the Wings doing differently?
Yeah, 2 things really for me. It's accountability and a coach that knows how to adjust, right? So putting in the right systems and being able to adjust on the fly during games, right? Whether that means just, okay, cool, we need to back off the puck a little bit more, or we need to pressure up, on the boards a little bit more and go into those corners, go into those dirty areas. Hey, we need more guys in front of the net. Whatever those little things are, they're making those adjustments in game, and it's actually working, right? Where Lon, it was just, let's jumble up the lines really quick, and that's the only thing I can think to do. I heard it last night, after that game, Todd McClellan came out and said Justin Hall had a shitty game. Like he was garbage, and he knows it. So again, Todd McClellan's not afraid to call guys out. He's not afraid to hold guys accountable for poor play. And I think, that was the problem with Derek Lalonde. He gave the same repetitive answer. And now these guys, can come in and, maybe they feel a little pressure from that, but I think they look like they're just playing a little bit more carefree and, they're not gripping the stick as tight. They're not, feeling the pressure as much anymore. I think, with a new coach coming, you always get that little bit of boost. And I think that comes with knowing that, okay, cool, our jobs are safe for a little bit longer, but, we don't
I'll
have to
give you
worry as much.
my 2 cents.
Please.
Todd McClellan walks in. Patrick Kane, in those 7 wins, 13 points, 5 goals. Larkin tearing it up as well since McClellan takes over. He's put up 5 points in the last 5 games. Or no, sorry, 7 points in the last 5 games and has 4 goals. Like, their best players are playing like their best players, and that's what they needed. They weren't getting that from Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane, I think before that stretch, had like 15 points in the first 35 games or something. Like, he just was not playing well, and now McClellan knows how to unlock guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy who can he walks into a team, and he knows how to unlock and squeeze some juice out of guys, and knows what to do. Lalonde had these players and wanted them to do the same thing every time they were out there. And it just stopped working. Like, that can work for a minute, but the Wings weren't ready for a Lalonde, in my opinion. And I think Lalonde will be a better coach in his next job. He will probably get another job somewhere, but I think he had to learn what he learned, and he just didn't have a good enough team to do what he wanted. Which he kind of came from. He came from the Islanders, right?
No, Tampa. He came from Tampa. Yeah.
And where you had a much richer talent group to work with. So, but anyways, yeah, I didn't love what he did in Detroit, and now McClellan is unlocking everybody. So that's good on him. And I hope that the Red Wings make the playoffs, and I hope that the Leafs get to play the Wings in the first round. That would be amazing.
I'll pay some money to go to that game.
I will go to one of those games with you. 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
One more question for me.
Yeah, let's make it clear. So if the Wings make the playoff, that would be a surprise, but I want to know what has been your biggest surprise during the first half of this year.
Columbus Blue Jackets.
All right.
First half of the year, they're in the playoffs.
Love it.
And they lost their best player. He's obviously there in spirit, and they've been we talked about how this could happen. That we wouldn't be totally shocked if they had.
I said it wouldn't.
If there's some level of like, well, it wouldn't be totally shocked if they were to channel this into something, and they went out and you're playing for something bigger than yourself. But I also thought that the first 10 games would be that. I think that's what I said. I said something about like, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a really hot start. But they've managed. I mean, right now I think they're 8-2 in their last 10, won their last 5. They've been great at home, terrible away. But yeah, they've been a big surprise for me. And if I had to go another team that is my other biggest surprise, no, they're my biggest surprise. Well, the Washington Capitals, definitely Washington Capitals. But we just beat them to death so much.
I like Columbus better. That's a much better pick. And
there we go.
Zach Werenski's my Norris Trophy pick right now. And if you told me, even pre, Johnny Gaudreau, incident, that Sean Monahan, when he first came on board, that he was going to be a point per game player, even playing with Johnny Hockey, I would have said, nah, you're high. That's not going to happen.
What a turnaround.
Dude, love it.
Turnaround for his career. He's been great. All right, well, that is our show. Our 10 burning questions. Let us know if you have any other questions burning a hole in your pocket. We'd love to answer those. You can find us on Instagram and X at OT Hockey Talk. I ditched the TikTok because what's the point?
Bye.
Pass away soon. We get on Lemonade or something. I don't know. Or there's some new China one, red something. It's got a red logo.
There's going to be something new here in a minute.
There's going to be something to teach me Mandarin. All right. All right. Well, that's our show. We'll talk to you guys soon.